Take me back. How long have you banked with First Community?
I have banked with First Community for about 6 years now.
Let's look at the 6 years ago. Take me back. What did it take? When you're shopping around for a bank and you actually shop for a Sharia compliant bank.
And prior to First Community Bank and basically the the Sharia compliant banks coming on board in Kenya, it was really basically you had no choice. You either had to stay away from banking, formal banking completely, which if you are in business or in formal employment, it is basically an impossibility. Or you basically had to go into the conventional. But 6 years ago, simply it was you had to have obviously your normal KYC documents, your ID, somebody who knows you, who is already banking with the institution, and basically then you make an application and your account is opened for you. So I didn't see any other more documentation from what was asked of me than any other conventional bank, basically.
And also in the business that you deal with, which is looking at money transfers and everything, because at this point it's also looking at international markets. How vulnerable are you, especially to know international exchange rates?
Basically, international exchange rates affect us in one way, but they don't affect us in another. When the rates are very high, customers basically, end customer is the one that benefits. When the rates are low, because they're getting less, sometimes the senders send less in, say, US dollars. Slightly, not really, because majority of the remittances that come into Kenya are for consumption on family support. So if the rates go up, the senders basically compensate a little bit. If the rates go down, the senders compensate a little bit. If the rates go up, it stays the same. Maybe it's a windfall for the beneficiaries, basically.
Very well. I think right now we're at a good place, gentlemen, because we've actually kind of broken down and demystified what Islamic banking and looking at Sharia compliant banking is. So let's have a look at just the whole banking sector in general. At this point in time, and what Dibal actually shared with me earlier is, of course, there's been talk about consolidation, looking at how banks can come together. From where you sit up with the chief, if you could just give us a perspective, you're the one being in the business. I will say you're the one right in the kitchen. How is it so far?
Well, I think with the kind of events that happened last year and early this year, we've had a slight shake-up in the market, which have affected some small banks. Because for First Community Bank, if you were to rank us, we are a small bank. And the collapse, if I may say so in quotes, of the two banks in 2015, and also the temporary shut of Chase Bank, although now its opening has, I believe, restored confidence within the banking sector. There was anxiety among the Kenyan population, and it's understandable. This is hard-earned money of people, and as banks, we're simply custodians. We're holding these funds in trusts for the depositors. So whenever there's uncertainty, you find that there's this notion that giants will not fail. A notion that has been proved not to really stand even in the developed world, where you have robust banking industries and probably more regulation than what we have here. But we thank the Kenyan population that this was something that's temporary. I believe that has come back to the industry, and we need to have banks that would serve a wide sector of the Kenyan economy. I think that's key. I think every tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 bank is looking for a niche. And as Kenya, we've always talked about financial inclusion. I think there's something that Jama said here, that prior to the coming on board of Islamic banks, we had persons who were actually shying away from the banking industry purely on a matter of faith, that they believe that the conventional banks would not help them maintain their faith. So that has even helped in terms of financial inclusion. So in my view, I think we just need more strict supervision, stringent regulation, more transparency, good corporate governance, and so long as we meet the regulators' requirements in terms of capital adequacy ratios, in my view, I think the more the merrier.
Very well. Fazal, sitting as CEO, I'm sure you interact a lot with the central bank. Communication from the CBK and what we actually had a chat with the Cabinet Secretary of Treasury is that they're looking towards a kind of a stringent view on looking at systems audit, because they've realized now actually fraud has taken a kind of a somewhat different levels in bank.
Yeah, I think you know, with the speed of IT and the speed of technology that's coming on, I think the central bank got this one right. I think there's with the systems that are in place, banks could hide certain of the issues that's coming out, and that's what we've probably seen coming through the market in the last year or so. So for us, I think it's very good. I think it's an exceptionally good intervention of the central bank governor, and more so, I think looking at IT systems, looking at where banks actually how they record their transactions are going to be critical. So in that way, you know, although this, the central bank has come out and even said that there is some capacity issues around them, but I think a good step was to get your external auditors to come and have a look at them. So I think that's going to be critical. I think for me, it's a good thing that's happening. And I think even when you talk about the consolidation, you talk about the issues around where will the banking sector be. I'm a firm believer that every bank has a role to play. Good governance, those are the issues that we need to look at. And I think what the central bank has done, and you can see the kind of progress they've been made, even from the past two banks in the way they've been handling it, I think it's very well done. I think they really have done a good job.
Why I'll say, you know, as a chief executive officer, is that Abdul Latif will actually hold you to account to the targets held. And you're looking at the shareholders, you know, looking at the shareholders and of course the customers. What has been reiterated time and time again is that banks should actually, or shareholders should actually hold their directors in charge in terms of also looking at, you know, corporate governance. Do you also have that kind of system at First Community?
Absolutely. We have, we have a very active director or board. Our shareholders are very active as well. We probably see them thrice a year. So they also they hold the board accountable for those kind of issues. I mean, even before the CBK has even come out with some things like the IT audit, I mean, we've already started those things. We've already got a person on our board that only looks at the IT activity, and we have a subcommittee on that. So somebody with that kind of expertise. So I also think we're looking forward, and I think, you know, looking at what the board is doing and what the shareholders require, I think they're fairly robust, and there's some very good discussions around that.
Hussein, how do you hold your bank to account? Because, you know, your I'd say a key account, I must say. So looking at how do you ensure that actually it lives up to your expectations?
Basically, from the most important part from the customer's point of view is that your deposit is safe. That any money that you hold in a bank account is safe. You can withdraw it when you need it. And I believe that because of the regulations, banks basically publish their information. It is freely available. They are normally posted on in the branches. They are published at least once a year in the newspapers, national newspapers. And it's to be vigilant and to see that banks are being profitable, which is a good indicator for me, because if your business partner is not being profitable, then they have a chance that they will take down your money with you. They will go down with your money, basically. So one of the first things for me is to see that a bank is profitable. If a bank is profitable, then I am basically confident. The other is basically to look at their governance structure and to see that, and their customer service, to ensure that they are doing what they say that they are doing, basically.
Yes, you're right, Abdul Latif. At this point in time, and of course not to take you further away from Sharia compliant and non-Sharia compliant, you're just speaking as a director, of course, being a player in the banking sector. Yes, I was saying you're right in the sense that I'd like to own a house, and I'd like to walk into a bank and ensure that I can get the best you know, rate, and actually ensure that I can get a mortgage perhaps to get a house. But really in Kenya, it's so hard to come by. As banks, you've been criticized a lot because, you know, looking at how do you support, you know, the growth of you know, housing, how do you support the growth of entrepreneurs, especially in terms of provisions. What would you comment about this?
First and foremost, I think that the direction that the board has given the CEO is here, is that we need to add value to the community. And we are looking at a lower level, you know, a lower level of the members of the community that need to be empowered economically. And he knows that when he came on board, one of his mandates was actually to focus more on the small and medium-sized enterprises as opposed to focusing on the large tickets. So as a bank, as a board, we've made that conscious decision that we need to go there and add value to the community. Secondly, as he says that Islam focuses on benefit to the community. I'll tell you a statement that one of the Sharia board members, the Muslim scholars, told us as a Sharia board. Because whatever we do has to get approval of the Sharia board, that actually it's in line with Islam. So sometimes you might want to push something through that you think is actually conforms to Islam, and they'll say, no, this actually violates Islam. Even though you guys are looking at making profit, but we are the ones who are going to be answerable in front of God. It's not you. You'll be paying dividends to shareholders. They are not answerable. We are the ones who gave you that focus. So we have made a conscious decision to focus. And the board has actually told him that, look, I would rather give 20 million to about 10 Kenyans, empower them, as opposed to giving 200 million to one corporation. So we are a community bank. Even our name, First Community Bank, we focus on the community. And if you look at our terms, we try as much as possible to accommodate the client, to see how we can empower the client without necessarily exposing the interest of the bank unduly in whatever transaction that we engage in. Yeah.
And I'm just looking at Faisal also just kind of commenting on that issue. Do you have walk-ins, people, clients who just come into you and say, you know what, I want a quick loan, perhaps I have an emergency and sort of thing, and what security also do you give?
And we do. The answer is yes, people do walk in. There's lots of emergencies. There's always some issue that somebody wants, not necessarily a house. I've got a sick mum, I need to take her to a hospital. And one of the views that we hold, and I was pushing it, is that we need to help the community. So we do provide, and in many instances on those cases, there's no security. There's a walk-in, and we believe we assess the case. And if there's a needy case, again, it's coming back to the ethics of Sharia, is how do we help the community? And many cases, and many a times, people do pay. I mean, those are really, really genuine cases. And really, I'm humbled sometimes just to see, 50,000 shillings that we lend out, and people are so pleased, and you kind of saved a life, or you saved something. And I think that's where this bank wants to go, is to kind of make a difference right at the grassroots level.
Abdul Latif, granted, yes. It's assisting the community, but I'm looking at also the risk levels, especially in mass lending, and looking at, of course, small and medium enterprises. Yes, we know that's the way to go, but also as a bank, how do you cushion yourself, especially from such risks?
Yes, I think as Fazal has said, we would look at a security that would be acceptable to us. In the event that we don't have a tangible security, then actually we go for the group model, where we bring in young men and young girls come together for a venture, and each one of them guarantees the other. You see, and that has worked well, because at the end of the day, if we are 4 of us, Laban, here, and each of us has a venture, and your performance with respect to your responsibility with the bank adversely affects me, there will always be peer pressure. And that has worked well for us as far as dealing with the micro level. And I think the other issue that also we need to take into account, that unlike conventional banks, there's an element of certainty in terms of your dealings with the bank. We have contracts, unlike conventional banks, when you have a change in the interest rates, and this is something that the CBK has been concerned about. You have banks unilaterally changing their rates. For us, we have contracts that do not allow us. Once we agreed with you, Laban, that look, we are going to be dealing with you on this level. We are charging you profit of X. There's no way we can actually change that. So you are coming from a position of certainty. There's no anxiety on your side. We also come from a position of certainty, and that really enhances the repayment of those facilities. So yes, we have cases where the people do have tangible security. There are cases where we don't have tangible security, but we use peer pressure, or we would look for somebody within the community who would be able to guarantee somebody else.
Hold on to that thought, Abdul Latif. I'll be coming to you, Jamal, because I think one of our responses online is actually saying that Mr. Hussein Jama was actually my boss previously, and of course we'll come back to you, especially looking at, of course, one of your friends there wanting to speak to you. But I'd like to join in Lele, who's calling in from Eldoret. Lele, if you could hear me. Lele, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Hello.
Hello, Lele.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yes, what's your question to our panel?
Okay, good morning. First, hello.
Yes, you can hear you, Lele. Go ahead.
My question is,
Yes.
I would like to know how they are, okay, this is Islamic law that operates that they don't charge interest. How do their banks survive if there are no interest rates?
Yes, Abdul Latif referred to that, but I'll make sure he actually addresses that to you. We'll come back to you. Abdul Latif, okay. I think you spoke about profit and loss. I think just for Lele to make sure he understands it properly, is that how do you make your money if you don't charge interest?
Okay, as I said, we have two models that we use to avail finances to our clients. One is what we call equity-based model that banks don't like using quite a lot because the risk element is quite high. And the second one is what we call trade or date-based. I'll use a simple example. For example, Lele here wishes to acquire a vehicle. Yeah, we as a bank need to own that asset first. As I said, our financing is asset-backed. There has to be something of value because for us, money is simply a medium of exchange. It has no value. So we will buy the car and agree with you, Lele, that we have bought this car, let's say for 1.5 million. We are going to sell it to you at 1.8 million shillings, and you're going to pay us in installments over a period of 2 years. So we have made our markup there. Yeah, so we are traders, just like anybody else, bringing cars from Japan at a cost and then mark it up. So that's one way, and we have various models. Even in terms of, let's say, working capital financing. Let me use that example because you have people who would say, okay, I don't want an asset. I want working capital for my small business. So what we would do is we'll look at the business that you are in. What's your product? So we buy your product in advance. So we give you an order. For example, if you're a carpenter, you make furniture, we'd say, okay, we will buy furniture from you of about 4 million shillings. We will pay you in advance 4 million. So already that has empowered you in terms of your working capital. Once the furniture is ready, we already have a buyer somewhere else where we'll sell for about 4.5 million. You see? So that's how we make our money. Yes, we are traders.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm sure Lele has understood that, and of course, just trying to relate to that. It's kind of because the conventional way of banking, I think, anyone will just think about it's all about interest. When you think about bank, you always got to think about interest.
Yes.
But before I come to you again, Jama, there's a call on the line, Sharif.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Sharif. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from South Sea. Assalamu alaikum for the panel. What I would like to ask the panel is that what the bank is involved in is not necessarily a banking system or an Islamic system, because what they are doing is, the way I can hear what they are saying, that they are buying something and then selling to you. That is speculation, which they are speculating in the future, which is very un-Islamic. How can you speculate in the future? How can you sell to me a vehicle that, okay, you are buying me a vehicle or my business, you are going to fund me 4 million shillings, and then you are telling maybe without interest or maybe, hello?
We can hear you, Sharif. Thank you, and we had your question. How do you speculate in the future?
The speculation in Islam, what I am against. So Islam is just call it no banking. So much. Bye.
All right, Fazal, how do you respond to that?
One of the principles around Sharia or Islamic banking is never to speculate. And that's the rule. So the definition of speculation is I got something today and I don't know what the future is going to hold. So that's what you're speculating on. The system that we use, and I think what Abdul Latif was trying to explain to us, is in Islamic banking, the transaction has to be concluded. There's a finality in the transaction when we're doing the transaction, not when we think we're going to conclude the transaction. Okay? So the point is, when you and I get into a transaction now, we are very clear that we bought the car for 4 million. We're selling it today for 4.5 million, and that's a concluded transaction. How you pay me, whether you pay me over time or you pay me immediately or on a spot or whatever the case may be, it doesn't really matter. So there is no speculation. So I have a product, I'm selling it to you as if you go to a store and you pick up a soda at Nakumat. You pay at spot. That's the transaction. It's done. There is no speculation about it. There's a need, we satisfy a need, and it's closed out. Speculation, what people really think is, we don't know what the future is going to hold. And that's true, we don't know. So that's why Sharia doesn't allow you to do that. Conventional banks normally would, and that's where the interest rates come in, you don't know what the rate's going to be next year. You have no idea. So that's the speculative arena. And many a times you'll see why people prefer the Sharia, both Muslims and non-Muslims. There's some finality, there's some certainty into the transaction. So if you have certainty, then there can't be speculation.
Very well.
If you allow me
sure,
on
let's
that,
see what-
as you say, it's a key principle of Islam not to engage in speculation. And Sharif here has, I believe, is a Muslim because even the way he greeted us. The model of Islamic banking is simply based on on a verse in the Quran itself, which says God has allowed trade and investment and prohibited interest. Yeah, in Arabic it says "Ahallallahu al-bay'a." God has permitted trade and investment, وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, and has stopped engaging in interest. One key difference, for example, between Islamic banks and conventional banks, where it is very, very clear that Islamic banks are not allowed to speculate, is, for example, Islamic banks will never, ever engage in what we call forward matching contracts in Forex. If it's a Forex exchange, it is spot there and then. We know the market, you know your rate. I'm not allowed, for example, to tell Laban, in 1 month's time, I'm going to buy $1,000 from you at 110. Now, there I'm speculating because I'm trying to hedge. For us, it has to be spot. It has to be concluded at that point in time.
Perfect. I'll have a very hot question for you coming up shortly, especially still on that. Sorry, Jamal, to leave you out in the cold, but as you can see, you know, it's very heated, especially when you look at, you know, the market, first of all, kind of tries to understand. There's, you know, that a bit of the common man doesn't quite know, okay, this thing about First Community, well, it's an Islamic bank, so that's actually what you're trying to demystify. Let me speak to you, of course, as a client, and I'm just looking at kind of the value add you get, especially in banking with a Sharia-compliant bank. What are some of the gains, especially in your business with the Forex exchange?
What
are some of your gains, especially in the business, in dealing with a Sharia-compliant bank?
For us, actually, it's a matter of principle. So whether it is we're going to be more profitable because we are with a Sharia-compliant bank or less profitable really doesn't come out long. But generally, what we like is the fact that, as he said, we are talking about spot transactions. There is no speculation. There is no any uncertainty in terms of who you're dealing with. And in terms of contracts, we know that they're clear. There is no we've just changed the rules. The normal old contracts used to say basically with 21 days notice the bank is allowed to change the notice, their terms, which is basically, to me, you're basically held hostage after 21 days notice. What do? Do you just basically move, or what do you? So I think basically Sharia compliant banking, Islamic banking, I think is an addition, a value addition in this society. And for us, as I said, it's a matter of principle, really, more than actually a profit motive.
Very well. I'm just trying to look at Twitter reactions, and of course we'll be loading that in a few, so I cannot see that for a while here. But if I could just come to the question that I've been reserving for you, gentlemen, is really conventional banks have kind of realized is, you know, there's actually a market in this, so there's actually a business in this. And then I once walked into a bank and I would see that, you know, there is a banking hall where you have kind of, you know, Sharia compliant, or you have, you know, banks have divested and have had some sort of segment onto that. I don't want to speak to you as directors of First Community, but just on an industry perspective, and I'll say, do you think that perhaps these banks are actually kind of eating your lunch in a way, or they're trying to, you know, come up with a product that, you know, will captivate the market in a very, very by using the word market, I'm just using it loosely, in the sense that, hey, we are actually Sharia compliant, but in the sense we're not.
Even my start, Laban, we are the leaders in this market. First Community Bank is the first Sharia compliant bank to be licensed in Kenya as a stand-alone bank. Whether are they eating into our market, or are we eating into their market, and they are trying to stop the eating into their market? I think that's really the issue. If I was to divorce myself from being one of the pioneers of First Community Bank and a director, one is, as Jam has said, it's a matter of principle. For us as Muslims, Islam is a way of life, and therefore I need to be governed by my laws. I would feel comfortable dealing with a stand-alone Islamic bank than dealing with a bank that has a mix. Because even if you go to, let's say you go to supermarkets, you have products that are named halal. And I'll observe this, Laban. You will find that even the way they are stocked, for example, in the refrigerator, they are stocked separately from other products. And why? To avoid what we call cross-contamination. Yeah. So for me, I would be more comfortable as an individual to deal with a standalone, because I know there is no risk of cross contamination. I could raise very many questions in terms of the let's be honest, windows.
Yes.
Yeah, in the conventional banks. I am a door. I am a house. You walk in, you have no issues there. And secondly, when I say that the Islamic Bank is open to all, I think one thing, and I would challenge my fellow Kenyans who don't profess the Islamic faith, and probably they're Christians. If actually you go into the Old Testament, you'll find that the Old Testament actually condemns the dealing in interest. So you might be surprised, Laban, that we have church organizations and Christian organizations that actually bank with us because they believe in the principle. Yes.
I really wouldn't hate to go into matters religion right now.
No,
but really still on that is in
Yes.
the sense that, of course, you're looking at the statistics, 80% Christians, especially in the Kenyan market, and you're also looking at kind of the cross relations and the cross, interactions, especially between Muslims and Christians, which is very healthy and beneficial,
Yes.
especially at this point in time. Fazal, I want to bring you in, especially in looking at the Kenya Bankers Association, because you do not really deal in an island. You deal also with the other, footy banks we have in Kenya. Do you get this, the level of appreciation, the level of understanding, especially when dealing in association as the Kenya Bankers Association?
I think there's more and more people are becoming aware, and I think there's some appreciation coming through now. And I mean, you've seen many banks coming out, what they call the so-called windows. So I think people and bankers per se, and the community at large are now beginning to say, this is what we want. And I think as this thing comes more and more to the fore, there will be better appreciation. And I also think that, we are answerable to the community, we are answerable to the depositors. So I think this type of things are becoming more and more relevant now.
Just out of interest, how is the relationship with the central bank?
We have a great relationship. I think it's excellent. I think we kind of chat on a regular basis, and I think the inspectors, the inspection teams are there. So for me, it gives me comfort, because even in our financials we produced out yesterday, they've looked at it. We're happy. From a governance point of view, I'm very happy with the bank the way it is. So First Community Bank, I think it's in a very good space. If it was any doubt about it, we would have known long time ago.
Indeed, very well. Let me bring in Joma at this point in time, because I'm just looking at the opportunities for investment, the opportunities you'd have to work with the bank, especially in benefiting you as an entrepreneur, for creating employment and creating wealth in the industry. 6 years so far, and I'm looking at the opportunity, the advancement in scaling to the next level, and you're speaking into a client out there who's still struggling or still thinking about how do I invest, or how do I come in and work with a Sharia compliant bank. I think what would be your advice to them?
And actually, I was thinking about this question while you were having this conversation. You talked about housing and the fact that housing has a big problem. Affordability is a huge issue. And then I was thinking, how do the Islamic banks help? And this actually, I know it. Saji would basically be able to confirm it. This is the classical, most Christic, the best example probably I can think of. You are a developer, so you have to have a developer in the value chain. If you don't have a developer, it becomes very difficult. I mean, we are just doing, and they're building houses for sale. And because they own the land and they have some small capital, they need further capital from a bank so that they are able to do their construction. In conventional banking, while you take a loan, you have to service that loan while the construction is going on. This is very interesting. The key question we always ask is, where is this financing going to come from? I came to you because I did not have money. I did not have sufficient money. In Islamic banking or Sharia compliant banking, the difference is this. We will put a moratorium on the repayment of both the principal and the profit during the construction phase. So you hold there, you finish your product. Once you finish your product, now you're selling it back to the public. Now you're generating income. Now you pay back your principal or what you call. So you get a window of opportunity, a year or two, or however long it takes you to complete the project. And you basically are free to focus on your effort of bringing it to fruition. So actually, if you talk about the question of bringing housing problem solving, I think Sharia compliant, The other is the equity participation, whereby you're saying basically here we are an equity participant. We are not here to say basically give me 20% interest rate. I don't care what happens to the market. Then basically the risk is being borne completely, entirely by the borrower essentially. So I think Sharia compliant banking can be part of the solution in terms of providing housing for this nation. And I think it's a big portion of our needs basically as a country. So that is basically where the value addition basically comes in. And I think that is one of Sajid can basically maybe add to that.
Before I come to Sajid, I just want you to also speak, you know, to the Christian folk and also looking at other religions who also kind of speculate and also looking at, okay, well, am I sure, am I not really sure, especially on how to bank with the Sharia compliant. Your advice to other religions?
I think there's no two ways about it. You're sure. There is no miscertainty. There is no apprehension about it. And there is no smokes and mirrors, as the director basically called it here. So as far as I'm concerned, you're dealing with very ethical people. You're dealing with people who basically are held to their word, and you're certain in terms of the contracts that you enter into from the first go. So in that way, I don't see any difference for any other Kenyan who may not share the religious beliefs that we hold to come and embrace this form of banking. For me, honestly, I don't see any, as this is not a hindrance. More than anything, I'm seeing it as an opportunity, really, more than a hindrance.
Maybe just quickly add on that, Laban.
Okay.
We have proved ourselves that we're there to serve all. If you look at our staff complement, and the CEO is here and Jama is here, he deals with our staff. If you were to walk in, you will have a mix of staff who are Christians and non-Christians. Actually, in our bank, you have non-Christians holding very, very senior positions in top management.
Non-Muslims.
Non-Muslims holding top positions. I can tell you, head of finance in FCB is a non-Muslim. The legal officer is a non-Muslim. Company secretary is, and I can go down the line. Even the tellers are a mix. You have Muslims and non-Muslims. Yes.
Indeed. I think the Kenya we want to live with, you know, interaction with communities and
we are a
religious,
community bank,
which is really great. Before I come to you, of course, thank you for all of viewers who are looking at, of course, interacting with us online at AM Live NTV, at NTV Kenya, at Laban Cliff. Thank you for that. But before we come to that response, I'd like to ask Fatma. Fatma, can you hear us?
Yes, Laban, I can hear you.
Very well. Please go ahead.
Morning, Laban.
Good morning to you.
And salam alaikum to the panel.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'm Fatma from Kitale. I work with the financial sector, not a bank. And I happen to have studied in Takaful. And by studying Takaful, I want to rectify Sharif. He called and he has uncertainty in FCB. I can assure him Islamic banking is not about speculation. First of all, they are buying, the way he said, they're buying the asset for you now, for you to use now. Speculation, they could have hiked in thinking about 2-3 years later. But they do not, Sharif, they do not. If they're buying for you land, they earn profit. Land will escalate more than what they're gaining. Let's say the 0.5. The land will might escalate to another 1 million on top, and then that's not what the bank is gaining. Another thing, according to Mitakaful, or Sharia banking or Sharia finances deals with 3 things. First is there's no riba, there's no interest. Second, it clears uncertainty. And third, most Islamic financing deals with contribution and sharing to the community. As FCB, I'm not campaigning for FCB. I don't work with FCB, and I'm not a client of FCB anyway. But I believe FCB, like any other Islamic financial sector dealing with Sharia, deals with contribution from the clients, and you will notice they involve themselves with the community like a lot. So my call is to Sharif. Sharif should embrace the Sharia banking, because it is not only for the Muslims. You'll find there are many other religions that don't deal with interest. Instead, they come, their profits, like even Takaful Insurance shares its profit with the poor. Takaful Insurance uses what is called wakala, and it shares the profits to the poor in the community. I believe it's the way to go for the future. And I'm so pleased with First Community Bank and Gulf Bank. and I congratulate the gentleman.
Thank you, Fatma, calling in from Kitale. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have actually one of us in our business desk, Hudayfa Aden, who's also a Muslim. I'm just asking, what does takaful mean? Just let me get this definition, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. Looking at a cooperative system of reimbursement and repayment case, and also paid by people and companies concerned about hazards and compensated out of fund in which they agree to donate small regular contributions and managed by a takaful operator. I just want to have a very quick definition of that. Was I understood?
You're right. Takaful, loosely speaking in English, it means Islamic insurance. Just like Islamic banking, Islamic insurance. It's different from the conventional model, because in conventional model, I, as a policyholder, sell my risk to the insurer. By paying a premium, I'm selling my risk to the insurer. Takaful, as Fatma has said, is where we come together, four of us, and we contribute to a pool.
Okay.
Yeah, and say, okay, Laban, Isaji, and the rest, we are contributing in the event that somebody suffers a calamity, then we can use this. So what happens is that the Islamic Insurance Fund manages that fund for us. Okay. Yeah, okay. And at the end of the day, if it makes a profit, by the way, if it makes a profit, because they are I think I would like to look at it as fund managers, CEO, isn't it? They are fund managers. So it will make profit, they will pay claims out of that. If there's a surplus, then whoever did not make a claim actually participate in that surplus. So they are paid out a dividend.
Great contributions there.
Yes.
Thank you. I really hate to cut you short. Yeah. But Fazal, I just want to come to you for closing remarks. Just give your closing remarks. And also, where your branches are at.
Okay. Our branches are, we have 18 branches. We have in Nairobi, Mombasa, Garissa, Moyale, Isiolo, Kisumu, and I think we're fairly well.
Mandera. No, sorry, Moyale, yes.
Moyale. Yeah. So I think we're fairly well distributed, and I think we have the mandate of the board to further expand. So I think you'll see FCB probably in every town in the country going forward. My closing remark, and I come back to the things of what you were saying in terms of how does the system work and why should people bank with this, and coming back to the windows and the doors and the arguments you have. It's just one rule or one kind of principle in Sharia is that take the lesser of the two evils. If there was nothing in this country, it's okay. But if there is something that's more pure, then you have to follow that.
Very well. Last but not least, Abdul Latif.
My last word is that as human beings, we are supposed to be governed by ethics. And the Islamic banking model is a very ethical model. I think it's quite fair. It observes justice, and this is what needs to be embraced. And I am happy that even the Kenyan government has committed itself to make Kenya the hub of Islamic finance. And you have East African countries follow suit, so Islamic banking is the future.
Thank you very much, Hussein Jamal, CEO Amal Express, Fazal Mahmood, who's the CEO of First Community Bank, and last but not least, Abdul Latif Saji, who's the director of First Community Bank. I must say, a very interesting discussion there, and of course, looking towards the common good. I think that really stood out for me, correlation, and it's not really a bank for one community, of course, supporting each and every community and open to all, that has been an interesting discussion on looking at kind of the banking sector in general, of course, demystifying Islamic banking, and also looking at ways and means you can actually advance yourself, of course, if you're looking towards support from any banking institution. Thank you to all our callers from Kitale, Eldoret, South Sea. Thank you so much for calling in. And also, we're looking at the social media reactions. I'm sorry we could not go into that at AM Live TV, at NTV Kenya, and at Laban Cliff. Keep interacting with us. I think we'll pass on your questions to also FCB. I see your Twitter handles at FCB_interact. And of course, I'm sure that the great gentleman will be keen to get back to you.